In a landmark and highly anticipated decision, the Supreme Court has officially overturned the Trump-era tariffs, dismantling a key pillar of the America First economic policy that has shaped U.S. trade for years. This historic ruling, delivered on August 10, 2025, has sent shockwaves through both global financial markets and American households, forcing a major re-evaluation of U.S. trade relationships with allies and rivals alike, and prompting urgent discussions among policymakers and business leaders. The tariffs, which specifically targeted steel, aluminum, and a wide range of Chinese goods, sparked years of heated debate. Supporters argued they protected vital U.S. industries and jobs, while critics warned of higher costs for consumers, strained international relations, and the risk of global retaliation. Now, with the court's decision, this era of aggressive trade protectionism comes to an end, setting the stage for sweeping economic adjustment as businesses, workers, and consumers brace for change. The ruling also redefines the limits of presidential power in trade matters, emphasizing the importance of constitutional checks and balances, and reaffirming Congress's role in shaping trade policy. At its core, the case challenged whether the president could impose sweeping tariffs under the guise of national security without clear and direct congressional approval. By striking down these tariffs, the court has clarified the separation of powers between the executive and legislative branches, and set a powerful precedent for how future trade laws will be interpreted and enforced. The nation now stands at a crossroads, with leaders and citizens alike considering the next steps, facing both new opportunities for international cooperation and significant challenges in a rapidly changing global economy. The impact of this decision will be felt everywhere, from the price of cars and electronics, to the future of American manufacturing, job security, and the competitiveness of U.S. businesses on the world stage. This is a pivotal moment for the direction of the U.S. economy, one that will shape the nation's role in global trade for years to come. Tariffs are essentially taxes placed on imported goods, and they play a significant role in shaping a country's economic landscape. By making foreign products more expensive, tariffs are intended to encourage consumers and businesses to buy domestically produced items instead. This strategy is designed to protect domestic industries from overseas competition, aiming to boost local manufacturing and preserve American jobs. The Trump administration took an aggressive stance on tariffs, arguing that decades of free trade agreements had hollowed out U.S. manufacturing and led to factory closures across the country. Steel, aluminum, and hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods were targeted with new tariffs. The administration justified these measures on grounds of national security and long-standing claims of unfair trade practices by other countries, especially China. Legal tools like Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act allowed the president to impose tariffs if imports were seen as a threat to national security. Section 301, meanwhile, was used to address unfair trade practices, particularly those involving intellectual property theft and forced technology transfers. These policies marked a sharp departure from decades of U.S. efforts to lower trade barriers and promote global economic integration through multilateral agreements. Instead, the Trump administration favored unilateral action and direct country-to-country negotiations, often straining relationships with both traditional allies and major economic rivals. Critics argued that the tariffs increased costs for American businesses and consumers, leading to higher prices on everyday goods and uncertainty for small companies. Supporters, however, saw these measures as essential for reviving American industry and protecting jobs from unfair foreign competition. The result was a dramatic shift in U.S. trade strategy, sending shockwaves through global supply chains and prompting other countries to respond with their own tariffs and trade barriers. Now, with the Supreme Court's decision, this turbulent era of trade policy comes to a close, leaving a lasting impact on the American economy and its role in the world. The legal battle focused on Section 232, which lets the president adjust imports if they threaten national security. Business groups argued the Trump administration overreached, using national security as a pretext for protectionism. They claimed there was no real threat from allies like Canada or the EU, and that Congress, not the president, should control such sweeping economic measures. Lower courts were divided, but the Supreme Court faced a fundamental question: can the president use vague laws to impose massive tariffs without Congress? The case became a test of executive power versus legislative authority in trade. The outcome would reshape the balance of power for years to come. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously to strike down the Section 232 tariffs. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that while the executive can define national security, it cannot do so without limits. The court found no direct link between steel and aluminum imports from allies and a real threat to U.S. defense. The ruling emphasized that Congress cannot delegate unlimited trade authority to the president. The decision narrows Section 232's use, requiring clear, documented threats to national security. The justices drew a line between economic and national security, preventing the law's use for general protectionism. This restores congressional power over broad trade policy and reinforces constitutional checks and balances. The decision sets a new standard for future administrations. Lifting the tariffs will immediately reshape key U.S. industries. Sectors like auto manufacturing, construction, and appliances, heavy users of steel and aluminum, will benefit from lower costs. Domestic steel and aluminum producers, once shielded from competition, now face global price pressures and must adapt quickly. The broader supply chain, from machine shops to brewers, will see input costs fall, potentially easing inflation. However, companies that invested based on tariff protection may struggle to adjust. The transition will be challenging for some, but offers new opportunities for innovation and growth. The economic landscape is set for a period of rapid recalibration. The long-term outcome depends on how industries pivot in this new environment. For consumers, the most direct impact will be lower prices. Tariffs acted as a hidden tax, raising costs for cars, appliances, electronics, and more. With tariffs gone, manufacturers' costs drop, and savings are expected to reach consumers over time. The effect extends to a wide range of goods, from vehicles to canned foods and household items. The removal of tariffs on Chinese imports will also lower prices on furniture, clothing, and toys. While price drops may not be immediate, the downward pressure is clear. Retailers may first recover margins, but competition will drive prices down. Ultimately, millions of Americans will benefit from a lower cost of living. U.S. allies in Europe, North America, and Asia have largely welcomed the Supreme Court's decision, viewing it as a significant turning point in international trade relations. Leaders from these regions have expressed optimism, seeing the move as a step toward restoring trust and predictability in global commerce. The European Union, Canada, Mexico, and Japan in particular interpret the ruling as a return to rules-based trade. They are now preparing to lift their retaliatory tariffs, which were imposed in response to previous U.S. measures. This signals a willingness to reset economic ties and move forward with fewer barriers, benefiting both sides of the Atlantic and Pacific. For American exporters, especially those in agriculture and manufacturing, this is a welcome development. Farmers who face steep tariffs on their crops and manufacturers who struggled with higher costs now anticipate renewed access to key foreign markets, which could boost sales and support jobs across the country. China's response has been measured but cautiously positive. While the removal of tariffs helps ease some immediate tensions, deeper disputes over technology, intellectual property, and market access remain unresolved. Still, Chinese officials have indicated that this decision could open the door to more constructive dialogue in the future. The Supreme Court's ruling also reaffirms the role of the World Trade Organization, encouraging a shift back to multilateral dispute resolution. This is seen as a win for the global trading system, which relies on established rules and impartial arbitration to settle disagreements. The Trump administration's earlier unilateral approach had strained global trade norms and created uncertainty among partners. Now, this decision signals a renewed U.S. commitment to international cooperation and a willingness to work within established frameworks. The global community is closely watching these developments, eager to see if this marks the beginning of a new era of American leadership in trade. Many hope it will lead to more stable and predictable economic relationships worldwide. The removal of tariffs paves the way for repairing strained alliances and expanding export opportunities for U.S. businesses. It also encourages foreign partners to invest in long-term trade agreements, fostering economic growth on all sides. While not all disputes are resolved, a major irritant has been removed from global commerce. This creates a more favorable environment for negotiation and collaboration, even as some challenges persist. As the world watches, attention now turns to America's next move in trade policy. The decisions made in the coming months will shape the future of international trade and determine whether this positive momentum can be sustained. With tariffs gone, the U.S. must chart a new trade policy. The immediate challenge is helping steel and aluminum industries adapt, possibly through innovation and worker retraining. The debate over U.S. China trade remains, as core issues like intellectual property theft persist. The Biden administration may pursue targeted actions, new agreements, or closer cooperation with allies to address these challenges. Congress regains authority over trade, likely prompting reforms to clarify and strengthen oversight. Lawmakers may require explicit approval for future tariffs, preventing unilateral executive action. The post-tariff era offers a chance to rebuild alliances and reaffirm America's commitment to open, rules-based trade. Active participation in global institutions and modern trade agreements will be key. The Supreme Court's decision opens a new chapter for U.S. economic policy. The Supreme Court's unanimous decision overturns a major chapter of U.S. protectionism and reasserts Congress's power over trade. Consumers and industries relying on imports will benefit from lower costs and reduced inflation. Domestic steel and aluminum producers face new competition and must adapt to survive. Globally, the ruling is seen as a step toward repairing trade relationships and restoring faith in international norms. The removal of tariffs opens export markets and reduces friction with key partners, though challenges with China remain. The decision places responsibility for trade strategy back in Congress's hands. The U.S. now faces the challenge of balancing domestic protection with the benefits of open trade. The nation's next steps will define its role in the 21st century global economy.